Hello and welcome. My guest has been responsible for more revolutions in the aviation ministry than perhaps any of his predecessors. Under Praful Patel, foreign airlines have been encouraged to come to India. It's no longer difficult getting a seat to fly abroad. Low-cost carriers have burgeoned. Indian airlines have been encouraged to fly abroad themselves, and the airports have also been revolutionized. But it's one controversy that comes back to haunt him again and again: the merger of Air India and Indian Airlines and the current state of the airline. Let's start with that, since I introduced you. I remember meeting, in fact we had lunch 1 week or so after you'd been sworn in, and you talked very knowledgeably about Air India. You'd been, I think, on the consultative committee. You knew aviation very well, you knew Air India very well. You were filled with optimism. And remember, I said to you, don't, it's like the third rail of the aviation ministry. Don't stake everything on this because you're going to come a cropper. And you said, no, absolutely not. In retrospect, was your optimism misplaced?
No, I don't think so. But at the same time, yes, I do feel with a little sense of anguish that one could have done much better on the Air India front. It's not that the government or the ministry has let Air India down. In some ways, I feel that the whole system and the whole, I would say, the institution probably has not yet seen, the future and what lies, ahead of them. And that's why a little sense of complacency has cost them a great deal. But at the same time, when you talk of the merger, I don't think there's any controversy. The controversy is, I would say, it's like a self-goal. Because when a carrier or two carriers, both owned by the same owner, which will be difficult times in future, which had no competition when they were born and they were now going to face the real competition, one had to look at the larger picture ahead. And it was not an overnight decision, not a decision of Praful Patel as everybody tries to make it out to be. In government, nothing works like that. It was a well thought of, well laid down procedure. But yes, I do agree that it hasn't worked out as well as one had conceived it to be. And
you mentioned the merger. The reason I call it a controversy is because the parliamentary panel has been critical of the merger, has called for the merger to be sort of wound up and for both companies to be separate entities. And you're right that the merger is not a new idea. When Madhurav Sindhya was the minister and Yogi
Yogi Tata's time, Madhurav Sindhya,
they talked about everybody. You needed a critical mass for an airline. Both these airlines were too small to compete. There's no problem with that. The problem is the way in which you went about the merger. Many people are critical of that.
Well, I don't know what is the other way. I think one took just the logical step ahead, and it was done in exactly the fashion any merger. It's not that merger is something new to Air India or to Indian Airlines. It is done all over the world across many airlines. Even in India, many airlines have merged in the past. The question is, yes, maybe if everybody had really put their hearts and the minds behind it, and everybody would have, looked at it more objectively, it would have been a much better deal. But having said that, I don't think there's any reason to be, regretting that decision. After all, there's always another day, and we have taken a series of decisions in the recent past to bring Air India out of this, and we will make sure, after all, it's a government's commitment. It is the national airline, and we have to do whatever it takes. A new board of independent directors, good names, eminent people are there. And it's not that they're just going to go for board meetings once in 2 months or 3 months. They're going to be actually set up committees. They're going to be heading it, and they're going to be actively involved. They have the fullest autonomy. We do not want to get into that. The first time ever Air India is getting a COO. Who's an expat, and
who was chosen by the board.
And I have not even seen him. I don't even know who he is. It's been selected by a very independent, eminent panel. The government has, after many, many years of dithering, 145 crore equity base for such a large airline. A lot of people, complain about various issues, but do not understand that there are a lot of other intricacies involved. We've now pumped in 800 crores equity. We're going to pump in 1,200 crores in this current year. And a series of other initiatives are also being taken. And I think even now, as one company, as a merged entity, if there are two verticals of the domestic and the international under one brand, under one code, and two separate verticals working, I don't think there should be any problem. And I think I have no issues if the board tomorrow so decides to take this kind of a decision. In fact, if they ask me for various issues, and that is one of the reasons, you see, we must understand that certain issues in the airline have to be tackled, and that's why I hope that under the new management, in a way, because of the board of directors now having come in for the first time after many years, they would be able to take some critical and hard hitting decisions. But I do not wish that this conception that employees are the first to be blamed. I don't want to take that approach. I also feel that that should be the last area to be really, when you say that everything should be, equated with wage cuts, that can be taken up in consultation with the process, but not actually the only issue which should be taken up, first hand. So I think a lot of things will move.
Can I give you sort of an employee's perspective? Because every time I take an Air India flight, somebody comes up and complains. And basically the burden of their song is many things have gone wrong with the airline over the ages. Much of it is a function of management. Much of it is a function of political interference, of bad decisions taken by politicians. But at the end of the day, the bad managers have gone, the politicians have moved on. It's these poor guys who are going to have to take pay cuts. Is that fair?
No, that's why I said pay cut is not the only solution to the current issues of Air India. Let's understand that yet as we talk, no pay cuts have taken place. So that issue should be not taken as
they're getting salaries late and being asked to take.
No, that's also not
that's
correct.
Wrong. All the reports are getting salaries late.
They are being paid salaries on time, everything, the PLIs, nothing. It's all happening as what it should
Pilots
be.
being not being paid PLI is wrong?
No, that's absolutely wrong. That's what I'm saying. These are misconceptions. So while we talk, there's no question of anything. All we expect them is to now, you see, that these are competitive times. That's the only issue, that people have a choice. People have the freedom to travel on any airline. So therefore, everybody has to put their best foot forward. And it's also unfair to say that everything is run by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. That's absolutely wrong. In fact, of course, we are the nodal ministry, but we are also a ministry where we have to look after the overall policy making framework. Tomorrow, then a private airline will come and complain that, we have no level playing field. So we have given a fair amount of level playing field to everybody, with the slight upper hand to Air India, which should be. And I think we respect that, and we wanted to have a great turnaround.
For a long time, Air India has been the only airline flying out of India. Capacity has been artificially curtailed. Foreign air carriers have not been given seats to keep Air India going. Air India simply does not know how to function in a competitive environment, and because it's so used to running to the government, they're now blaming the government. Is there some truth in that?
Well, no, you see, we must accept the fact that from being the lone carrier and the privilege, they are now in the marketplace, which is fiercely competitive. And aviation is a competitive business and a very, very, I would say, a cost-efficient business. So to that extent, yes, there have been some issues, but I do not think anybody should have a reason to complain. At the end of the day, what has growth in India come about? It has come about in India, domestic and international, because we've liberalized the skies to a great extent.
So we are saying now that we're not talking about two different airlines with one name, which is roughly what's happening now. We're not talking about one airline with two completely different corporate philosophies and cultures merged. We're talking about one code, one brand name, and two verticals.
Yeah, that will make it, that will still solve a lot of the issues which...
and ease a lot of the insecurities?
Yeah, the insecurities which are flowing in. I think this is one of the thought processes which I would think, I would urge the new board to have a look at it.
Why is the government of India obsessed with sorting this out? Privatize it, let it take its chances in the world.
We have been long enough in Delhi to know that Praful...
For some kind of aid. That seems to have eased up, doesn't it?
Well, certainly, I would say with a little sense of cautious optimism, as I use the word. 2010, if the current trend of growth continues, we can say the worst is over. I wouldn't say that it's completely out of the woods, but there's certainly a ray of hope. One concern is oil is again at $86, $87.
And some predictions say that it will reach 100.
And that's what that's why I keep my fingers crossed. I hope the Indian economy with its resilience, will be able to carry the airlines also with that kind of a growth mode through 2010. And if that does happen, certainly I see change and a lot of optimism in the minds of the airline owners, because they're seeing very good loads in the last quarter, and that will help them recover a lot of their past losses.
If you talk about the revolution in air travel in India, stage one of the revolution was we moved away from Indian Airlines and many new players came into the field and passengers finally had a choice. Am I right in saying that we are now into stage two, and stage two is low cost air travel available to everybody, no longer remaining something that people on company accounts do or rich people do, permeating down to to many other sections of society?
Oh, certainly. I think the future of aviation is on a low cost model. And if you want to increase the base of air travel in India, which has dramatically shifted in the last 5 years, the reason is purely because low cost travel came into being in India. And that's why we are in a way lucky that while our growth is coming in for the first time in so many years, we are now also having an equal number of low cost airlines operating in India, and even the legacy carriers, as we call the full service carriers, are moving a bulk of their fleet into the low-cost segment. So that's, I would say, the future of aviation in India and in the world. And in fact, what really will drive low-cost carriers in future is that secondary and tertiary cities, which really are not yet connected by air or meaningfully connected by air, once they get more flights into those cities, you will see a real boom in air travel in India. In 2004, we had only 45 cities in the country connected by air, and now it's already 92, and it will grow much more. And that's where I think the boom will come. And there's a lot of pressure on infrastructure, of course.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Because one of the successes of your stay at the ministry has been the opening of airports like Hyderabad, Bangalore, which are world-class airports. Delhi apparently opens in July, and that from all accounts is also going to be a world-class airport. So things are changing, but they're not changing at other airports. And even places like Delhi, you effectively land in Jaipur and drive the rest of the way, because it takes you half an hour after you land to get to the terminal. There is apparently a pressure on infrastructure.
Of course, there is a huge pressure on infrastructure, but this Delhi half an hour bit will go once the new terminal opens.
Which is another 3 months.
Because the new runway is actually situated on the other end of the new terminal. Okay. So all the traffic which moves all the way to the domestic terminal at the moment will ease. But the fact is, yes, that Mumbai, Delhi especially, are the two metros which drive aviation in India.
Right.
And all cities want to be connected by these two cities. So it has to be more airport capacity or air capacity which has to be created in both these cities. And in fact, Navi Mumbai is one area of great concern. Fast enough.
Is that airport happening?
Well, it has to happen. If that doesn't happen, the economy of Mumbai, the Mumbai region, Pune, Nashik, and even to that extent we affect the economy of India.
If I remember correctly, some months ago, probably a year ago, the Prime Minister cleared the project.
Yes, absolutely.
So why isn't it going ahead?
Well, there was a clearance from the Prime Minister's office. He was then holding the portfolio of environment.
Yeah.
And which allowed the creation of new greenfield airports in coastal regulated zones.
Right.
And that's what was our understanding until the Environment Ministry has asked for a fresh terms of reference. So we have to
we're back to square one.
Well, I can't answer what is the status, because it's purely in the domain of the Environment Ministry, and I only hope that they give us an early decision.
Hang on, what you're saying is, you're saying that the project that we've all been waiting for, the Navi Mumbai project, which is desperately needed to ease the pressure on Mumbai airport, is now in abeyance, because even though it was cleared by the Prime Minister, the Environment Ministry is asked to look at it again, and there could be a hold-up, or there could even theoretically be a rejection.
Well, I don't know. I can't say whether they're going to reject it or not, but the fact is...
Is this like normal in your government, that the Prime Minister okays things and ministers then look at it again? I mean, is this the way you guys function?
Well, I don't want to comment on that, but...
It's your government, yeah?
Well, but I have nothing to say. All I'm saying is that I am a little frustrated that Navi Mumbai is on hold for so long, and the earlier it happens, it's good for Mumbai, it's good for India's economy.
Are there environmental problems with that airport?
Everything in Mumbai is on CRZ. At the end of the day, it's a coastal city. So if everything is going to be looked upon as an environment issue, certainly they should be addressed. But they have to be addressed time bound and in a logical way, because at the end of the day, an airport is not a luxury. 3,000, 4,000 acres of land can't be found at will. It has to be linked with other vital infrastructure, road, railway, everything. You can't make an airport in the middle of nowhere.
But you're pals with Jairam Ramesh. I mean, just go and see him, ask him to track one or two jokes and lend you his hair dryer, and I'm sure it can be done.
Well, I wish it was that simple.
It isn't. All right. It's no secret that you didn't want to come back to this ministry. You've done a lot in 5 years. You thought it was time to move on. I remember being on a television program with you after the elections, and you said you really wanted a new challenge. You wanted an infrastructural ministry. That hasn't happened. For better or for worse, you're back here doing really what you've done in the last 5 years.
I thought that 5 years in a particular job would have been, enough, and a new challenge would have been more welcome. But nonetheless, it's a situation where we are in coalition politics, and whatever the Prime Minister so decides would be good for me, and that's how I take it.
Looking ahead, and I'm going to force you to look ahead in aviation because it looks like you're stuck over here. What we are looking at is more airports.
Sure.
Yes. We're looking at more low-cost carriers.
Sure.
Yes, that's the future. We are looking, hopefully, at no big oil price hike. So rather stable time for the aviation industry rather than the scares of last year?
I am not so sure, because aviation turbine fuel prices have moved from the 70s to the high 80s, and that's something which cannot
and nobody's willing to predict how far they go.
Which cannot be predicted accurately by anybody.
So there could be a bump there?
If that does happen, it could be a serious issue again for airlines.
Finally, on Air India, your view is that yes, you're disappointed. Many of the hopes you'd had for Air India have not happened, but you think things are looking up?
I hope so, and this is the endeavor of the government. And I tell you with a sense of confidence that even for Air India, the worst is over. They will be able to turn it around. It's a question of time. You can't give any schedules as to 1 year or 6 months, but the fact is, if everybody puts their hearts and minds together, and that's what I will hope to see, things can be much, much better for Air India.
That's either a stirring statement or famous last words. Praful Patel, thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week. Goodbye.